Hey, Edwin Canestracci here. And that's right, you're here to hear me. Maybe you know me, maybe you don't. But regardless, you want to know what I think of every Iron Maiden album. That's right, every single goddamn Iron Maiden album. And I'm going to rank them. I'm ranking them. And as I rank them, I'm going to review them. And I'm doing it right now. And hey, I'm taking this serious. This is going to be a totally respectful and reverent review of Iron Maiden. Because when you really get down to it, it's just about the music with Iron Maiden, right? Hey, like I said before that intro, Edwin Canestracci here. I'm drinking something I never drank before. It's Johnny Walker, Black Label. God knows I've drinking this before. That's right, my favorite scotch, Johnny Walker, Black Label. Got a new bottle, already putting in debt in that. No, what I'm talking about is the Whiskey Stones, they call them. It's this thing, it's very hip now, Whiskey Stones. But, and I was like, oh, I'm not sure, but they look kind of cool. And I am a sucker for appearances. Look, that's pretty rock and roll. There's a fucking rock in my drink. Yeah, this is rock. Put rocks in my drink. But I put rocks in my drink. No one else did. But I bought them. Someone, I don't know where they got this rock from. Probably from outside some dirtbag's house. You know, he collects rocks and then he sends them out to people. And they put it in a fancy box. So it's like I'm not just drinking fucking rocks in my drink. And apparently you keep them in the freezer and they make your whiskey colder without diluting the taste of the whiskey, which ice will do because it waters it down. But I gotta tell you, it doesn't really taste that much. It's just kind of like I'm drinking whiskey with rocks in it. It's rock and roll, I guess. Rock and roll. And some of you out there, you're probably already hating me because of that intro I did. Hey, have a sense of humor. It's Iron Maiden, for God's sake. And they're totally selling out the merch these days. Be honest about it. Be honest. It's all cool. You all love Eddie, so you don't care. But what makes them any different than Kiss anymore? They're doing exactly what Kiss has been doing for decades. They're cashing in big time. So just admit it. Admit that Bruce and the boys are cashing in big time. And they're selling all these middle-aged dudes all this Eddie shit, and you're fucking eating it up. You're eating it up, Maiden fans. You want whatever they got. You know, if they got fucking Iron Maiden popsicles, you'll be buying them, putting them in the freezer. I'm sure with the new album, there's got to be like 25% off, like the new Japanese beer or whatever they're selling to tie in with this new album of theirs. And that's the big thing. I'm going to be talking about the new album. Senjutsu. That's the proper samurai pronunciation of the new Iron Maiden album. Senjutsu. Anyway. So yeah, I got this list, and I'm not gonna do a big preamble with this because I did another Iron Maiden video. It was just focusing on the Paul Di'Anno years, the first two albums. So you already know what I think about it, and yeah, I'll just say it right out. I'm a Di'Anno Maiden guy. That's my favorite Maiden. So that's already a spoiler. You know what the top two albums are gonna be on this list, but you don't know the order necessarily, and that could change. Everything's subject to change. So whatever I might have said in a past video or one of these various RMCP Army related Facebook groups, anything can change, especially because this week I did the deep dive. I listened to a lot of later Maiden, which I hadn't listened to in a while. And yeah, I'm not a huge fan, as some of you know, of the later Maiden albums. And, we're going to get in it. I will give everything a fair shake. But yeah, Judas Priest is much better than Iron Maiden. Definitely these days. There's no question. I'm sorry, there's no question. These days, firepower compared to anything Iron Maiden's done in like the past 30 years, give me a break. Come on. Maiden, come on. Put together your Eddie puzzle, have fun with it, enjoy it. We all have our taste, we all like the things we like, but sometimes some things are just scientific fact. And Priest owns Maiden these days. Owns him. Hey, in the 80s, the early 80s, they were competitive. They're competitive. Hey, I love Priest, and I love Point of Entry, but I'll admit, Killers is better than Point of Entry. Killers owns that album, even though I love Point of Entry. Killers is, well, you'll find out what I think of Killers. But, man, early Maiden, even the first couple of Dickinson, they were awesome. They were one of the greatest metal bands of all time. And back then, yeah, they had Eddie in these awesome album covers, but it wasn't just about Eddie. They were just a badass band, and they wrote great songs, and Steve Harris's bass was such a distinctive force to reckon with. And we'll get into that, and we'll get into Paul Di'Anno when we get to those albums, but that's not going to be for a while, my friends. But yeah, 80s Maiden, especially the first half of the 80s, one of the greatest metal bands ever. So I just want to say that out of the gate, so don't think I'm a hater, and I'm very objective. In the early 80s, Maiden were a force to reckon with. They were one of the top bands, no question about it. These days, I feel like they're living off Eddie. If it wasn't for Eddie, I don't think I'd even be doing this video now, and we wouldn't all be talking about Iron Maiden. That's just my honest opinion. You might have a different opinion. I don't mean to offend you. And, you know, hey, if you love their new stuff and it's really working for you, that's great, man. That's great, because that's what it's about. It's about loving music, enjoying it, and we're all going to have our different opinions, all right? I might be a bit of a smartass, but we all got our different opinions. These are just my opinions. I'm just some asshole with some opinion like everyone else. And my opinion is that if it wasn't for Eddie, no one would give a fuck about Iron Maiden anymore, because I think they haven't really been bringing it for a long time. But fucking Eddie is a cool looking mascot, so what are you gonna do? Derek Riggs, the man that created Eddie, he's the artist that created Eddie and did all their best album covers. That's right, they've never done album covers that look as good as the Derek Riggs stuff. Does he get a piece of this action? I feel like he should. If he doesn't, he should lawyer up, because Bruce and the boys, and Bruce wasn't even in the fucking band, you know, when he created Eddie. In fact, Eddie wasn't even initially created for Iron Maiden. This was something Derek Riggs was working on for some punk band. And then I think Maiden's manager came across him and was like, oh yeah, that'd be great for Iron Maiden. And he made him add some hair to make it look a little more heavy metal and less punk. And then obviously he redesigned Eddie to look a little more badass on Killers, but that's his design. Derek Riggs created Eddie. So every time Iron Maiden sells, like, you know, an Eddie model or toy or video game or puzzle or lunchbox, he should get a piece of that. That's all I'm saying. I don't know. Maybe they do have some kind of deal like that with him like that. I don't know. Tell me. I'd like to know in the comments section. Does Derek Riggs get the money he deserves? Because he definitely should get a percentage of all this merchandising. That rant about Eddie aside. Hey, that's my opinion. Now, let me just say one other thing about Eddie before we get into the albums, all right? And again, we wouldn't be talking about these albums if it wasn't for Eddie. Because if it wasn't for Eddie, Iron Maiden would have just been some band that had some awesome albums in the 80s and then a bunch of spotty albums afterwards, in my opinion. But because of Eddie, it's like people really want to like him. They will sit through a fucking 12-minute boring song because in their mind they're imagining Eddie, you know, that's helping them get through the song. You gotta admit, come on. Some of you Maiden fans have to admit that some of these later songs bore you. Come on. I mean, maybe you like them, maybe you really like them. I don't know. All I'm thinking is I try to think of Eddie during them, and it's still not working. Eddie's like looks at me and goes like, I can't help you, man. This shit's weak. Eddie's like, fuck it, bro. Let's listen to some Priest. Have a sense of humor. It's an endearing quality to be able to laugh at yourself and to laugh at others, like Maiden fans. But one last rant before we get into the ranking. And we will get into the ranking. So just hold up. You know, if you can listen to a fucking 20-minute fucking Iron Maiden song, you can listen to me fucking rant a little bit about Eddie. Eddie, in the early days, and I still think he's cool, don't get me wrong, nothing against Eddie, and I'm an Eddie myself, you know, so I always had a little kinship with him. Eddie, the Ed. Let me tell you something about Eddie. In the early days, he himself was also more badass. If you look at those early Maiden album covers, he's just this like horror movie, 80s horror movie kind of character that just, he's like hanging around the streets of London. He's from the streets, just like Maiden was, you know? He's just fucking East End London shit. And Eddie represented that. And he's just this fucking dude in the streets that'll show up and fucking stab you, you know? Or fucking get you with a hatchet. He had like a fucking t-shirt, nothing else, you know? He's just this crazy fucking monster that will fuck your shit up. That's what Eddie was. Hey, even though I love the album cover, the shift kind of happens with Power Slave. If Power Slave were introduced to what I call like Disney World Eddie. This is where the beginning of Disney World Eddie, where suddenly Eddie's like seen all throughout history and different worlds and different cultures, and you know, it could be the future, it could be the past. They brought it back a little to the roots in the early 90s for a split second, but after that, they kind of went back to Disney World Eddie again. You know, I'm surprised with the new album, Senjutsu, that they're just getting to the Samurai Eddie. I feel like they should have got to Samurai Eddie like a while ago. Such an obvious idea, and of course, a Samurai Eddie is gonna look badass. It's gonna look badass. So you Maiden bros are all gonna want to fucking get as much Samurai fucking Eddie shit as you can. Action figures, tie-in beer, t-shirts, you know. You're gonna get that, because it's fucking Samurai Eddie. He looks badass. In fact, I'm convinced that they started with the idea that this album was gonna be based around a Samurai Eddie. Maiden Inc. got together, they had a board meeting, and they were like, so what's the next Eddie that's gonna look really cool in our merch? They said Samurai Eddie, and it was like big fucking light bulbs going off everywhere. You know, it was like, whoa, why didn't we do this already? It took us this long to get to Samurai Eddie? Then they're like, okay, great. We gotta write at least one song that's like Japanese. It's got a Japanese title, so which will be the title track, so we can tie in with this cool Samurai Eddie that's gonna sell a lot of merch and get people interested in the album, you know? Because it's all about the music, right? You know, really from Power Slave on, Eddie was no longer that fucking crazy monster bloke stabbing and fucking people up in the streets just wearing a t-shirt, you know. And I think eventually that Eddie, what happened is they captured him and they put him in an insane asylum, which is a peace of mind. And so that's kind of the end of that Eddie. They caught him because he was going around killing people, and in his mind he was like working with Satan, which is the Number of the Beast album cover. So first we're introduced to Eddie, and he's just like, he's this fucked up, kind of wonky looking underground kind of punk metal looking dude, you know, even though Steve Harris acts like there was no punk influence. He liked to write about history, so why not rewrite it? So anyway, so then Eddie he kind of grows into himself. He looks cooler on Killers, and he kills some people, and he's like, ha ha ha, I love killing people. And, you know, in his mind, then we go to, you know, Number of the Beast, and in his mind, it's like he's controlling Satan. He's even more powerful than Satan. He's the puppet master of Satan. But that's just because Eddie's fucking crazy, you know? And then they put him away, and that's peace of mind, and then that's it. That Eddie's gone, you know? Pretty much he's gone. And then we're introduced, even though, hey, I will tell you, you don't know where it is, but yeah, Power Slave's a fucking awesome album. I'm not that anti-Maiden, you know? I can recognize the awesomeness of Power Slave, and it's an awesome album cover. But that is the beginning of Disney World Eddie. You know, Iron Maiden, they are the ultimate dad metal band. What's more dad metal than like sitting around watching the History Channel, learning about a lot of old battles and wars and shit, and then going to Epcot Center? You know, fucking metal dads love Epcot Center. Hey, I like Epcot Center too. It's a lot of fun. You know, you can get a beer, you do the whole bender around you know, the World Showcase, and that's Maiden. Maiden's like doing the World Showcase at Epcot Center. You know, you're going around, you get, here's Mexico, here's Scandinavia, here's Norway. I'll get a nice $15 beer at Norway, you know, which is like, it's like an Iron Maiden beer. You pass, you know, Japan, you hit Japan, so you know, there is some Senjutsu. You know, you get the samurai shit. You could go into a store, you buy a samurai outfit. You go, hey, this is cool, this is badass. I just bought a samurai t-shirt. You got your fucking Norwegian beer while you're fucking wearing your fucking samurai shirt you got from Japan. And then you end up in fucking England, and you got the English flag, and you're like, yeah, man, yeah, it's fucking awesome being middle-aged. And that's Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden is getting drunk and going through the World Showcase at Epcot Center and going, yeah, perfect dad metal band. And I'm not being entirely cynical when I say that. It's fun. Have fun, man. Have fun at Epcot Center. Have fun with your fucking Samurai Eddie. It's cool, man. It's cool. Have fun with it. I gotta wonder, though, what's next, Eddie? They're gonna start running out of shit. Are we gonna get Eskimo Eddie? Is Eskimo Eddie next? I think, yeah, that's my prediction. We're gonna get Eskimo Eddie, and there'll be a 15-minute long song called The Fur Trapper. The Fur Trapper. That's gonna be a hard song to get through. I could already tell you, though, The Fur Trapper is going to start off slow. We'll hear some of that kind of Norwegian-sounding Christmas music that their music sounds like these days, especially during the slow parts. And, there'll be a little shitty, high-pitched synth Steve is playing. And, the guitars will be mellow, and Bruce will kind of croon it as best as he can. And then it'll kick in, and we'll get to the gallop, and they'll gallop, and then there'll be like 10 minutes of 3 guitars soloing. And they'll noodle around, they'll do the noodling. And then we'll get back to the slow part. And we'll learn a lot about fur trapping, what fur trapping is like. So, so you'll feel smart afterwards. You'll be like, now I know what it's like to be a fur trapper. And there you go. So there, you don't even need to get the next album because I just told you about it. So here we go. Let's get to the ranking now. Okay, now you want to know what a smart ass like me thinks of the catalog. And let me tell you, again, Maiden in the first half of the 80s, yeah, I'm very specific, were one of the greatest metal bands ever. One of the greatest metal bands ever. And then after that, they had some good albums here and there, and then some alright albums, and then some flat out bad albums. Bad albums. And this is why this is probably going to be my most controversial video, because Maiden's a really big band. So yeah, I might bring on some hate here. I think one thing that you'll all agree with, number 17, Virtual 11. This album's a piece of shit. Yeah, Virtual 11. I think even the most diehard Maiden fans will have my back on this one. Okay, goddamn. Not only is this the worst Maiden album, I believe that this is the worst album from any major rock act. And that's rock, all right? So we're talking metal, heavy metal, hard rock, rock and roll. Actually, let's just say music. It's the worst album ever from any major music act in history. It's embarrassing. It's like, what the fuck? What's going on here? Now, musically, this is the interesting thing. Musically, I like it a little bit better than the 3 albums I put above it, all right? I think it's a little bit better. It's not great, don't get me wrong. Production's shit and the music's derivative, and in some ways it foreshadows a lot of my problems with modern Maiden. But it's a little punchy and fast at times, and you got like the first song, for example, Future Real, which they make one word, although that's not really a real word, Maiden. You should know better. You should know better because you're smart guys. You read history books. Anyway, but Future Real is like, it's a 3-minute song. It's fast. It's kind of punky. It's fun. It's kind of like something they would have done in the early days. And, then you got The Angel and the Gambler, which starts off kind of like a cool kind of Who song, a little different. You got the organ, but man, it gets shitty really fast. This song, and then the whole album. The Klansman, I hear people talk up this song. It's all right. I don't know. To me, it kind of begins the modern, boring Maiden formula. We got the slow part in the beginning, the soft slow part in the beginning, the bass, blah, blah, blah. They go into the gallop. It goes on too long. A lot of long, boring solos. To me, the Klansman is like the blueprint for half their songs that you'll hear in the next 20 years. So because of that, I don't like the Klansman. And it's like based on, I guess, like Braveheart. I don't know. I'm not interested in history. I got out of high school and I was like, fuck you, history. I'm done with history. I want to live in the moment, in the present. Obviously, I'm getting around the big problem with this album. Yes, the big problem with this album, let's just say the biggest problem with this horrible album is Blaze Bayley. Whoa! Can that guy not sing? Yeah, so he can't sing. So Iron Maiden, one of the biggest bands in the world, and I blame Steve Harris for this because he calls the shots, especially when Bruce isn't in the band. When Bruce is in the band, they co-lead. They're both calling the shots. If we learned something from the early 90s, if anything, Bruce has more clout than Steve even. But with Bruce gone, it's obviously Steve Harris's show. Kind of like Glenn Tipton after Rob left. Priest. But this is the thing. Priest, when they got Tim the Ripper Owens, it was a great underdog story. Inspired the movie Rockstar, Mark Wahlberg. It's a great underdog story because it was a guy who sang in a Priest tribute band. And those aren't great albums. But Ripper can sing. He has the pipes. Like, he could actually do Rob Halford shit. That's why he got the job. It was an underdog story, but it was an underdog story for a man that could actually sing. I don't know. Maybe Steve Harris wanted to try to top Priest. So he was like, hey, we'll do even better. We'll get some guy in some band that can't even sing. So there. He really is an underdog. He can be you. Literally, Blaze Bayley can be you. Unless you can actually sing, then you're actually better. And there's a good chance of that, actually. So Iron Maiden, one of the biggest bands in the world, hire a guy that can't sing. Especially now on this album. Maybe the other album, maybe he can barely sing. All right? We didn't get to that one yet. All right? But on this album, he can't sing at all. It's horrible. One of the worst vocal performances ever. It's embarrassing. I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed for everyone involved. I feel sorry for Blaze. It's not his fault Steve put him in the position to be embarrassed like this. I actually feel sorry for the guy. But the songs aren't that hot too, The Angel and the Gambler, they keep repeating that chorus, which isn't that great, again and again and again and again. And the guy never changes how he sings it too, because he can't sing. So Blaze keeps singing it in the same fucking way. Oh, it's horrible. It's horrible. It's an embarrassment. Don't look to the eyes of the stranger, the educated fool. These songs are just fucking dog shit. They're horrible. Enough of this fucking album. So yeah, that's the worst fucking Maiden album. No surprise. No surprise that the shitty album of half-baked songs with a guy that can't sing is the worst album. Easy one. Now we're getting to number 16. This will speed up after a while, because once we get to the cool albums, I don't have to tell you so much about them, because they're fucking awesome, and you listen to them a lot. I bet you even the Maiden fans that claim they like the fucking new shit, I bet you they still listen to the old shit more. I bet you still listen to that shit more. Come on, you know you do. Okay, number 16. The Final Frontier. God damn it. I wanted this to be the bottom album, because it deserves it, because this album's shit too. Sorry if you like it. Sorry if you like it, but it's a shitty album. It's horrible. It's horrible. The only thing that puts it above it is, I'll say this for Bruce Dickinson, even older Bruce Dickinson sings better than Blaze Bayley. It wouldn't take much. Believe me, it wouldn't take much. You could just sing at all, and you'd be singing better than Blaze. But yeah, this album, not one, memorable song. I guess, you got I think it was the first single from it, El Dorado. Has a little bit of life to it, does the predictable gallop thing, but it's not a good song. It's still kind of boring. It's still too long, and that's like one of the shorter songs on this album. Oh my god. It's just a bore fest. Them doing, the Talisman. Oh fucking god. It's horrible. The Man Who Would Be King. Okay, this is another thing. And I love the movie The Man Who Would Be King. But there's another thing. There's this idea, there's this misconception from Maiden fans that Iron Maiden's like clever because they base things on like history or old movies or old TV shows, and it's just like they're just very obvious and on the nose. They just like grab like for example, Black Sabbath is inspired by the Mario Bava movie Black Sabbath, but the song Black Sabbath is not about that movie. It's not about that movie. They made up their own. Actually, Ozzy wrote the lyrics to that song. Usually it was Geezer at that period, but Ozzy wrote the lyrics. But it's an original song, about Satan coming in. It's got nothing to do with the movie. They just took the title. They were imaginative people, Geezer and Ozzy and Black Sabbath, and they could make up stuff. Whereas whenever Iron Maiden sings about a movie or TV show or long poem or whatever the fuck they're singing about, it's always literally about that thing. If they write a song about The Fugitive, it's about The Fugitive. I don't know if it's the movie or the TV show. It's the early 90s, so a comment section, because I'm actually curious if it's the movie or the TV show. But they always literally sing about the thing they're singing about. So, I don't know. To me, I'm not so impressed by that. It seems kind of dumb to me. But hey, that's just me. That's just me. To me, Iron Maiden's very Spinal Tap in a lot of ways. Like, they take themselves, you could tell Bruce and Steve take themselves very seriously. They take themselves very seriously, and they act like they're above singing about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. In fact, I know, because I remember Bruce doing this interview in the 80s where he was just like making fun of bands that sang about sex. Let me tell you something. Bon Scott sang about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So did David Lee Roth. So did Steven Tyler. And they all wiped the floor with your fucking lyrics. Iron Maiden is not a great band lyrically, in my opinion. Some are better than others. But I don't care. I mean, I like Whitesnake, and their lyrics are shitty too. But at least they're not pretentious and act like they're clever. But man, Iron Maiden, this fucking history lesson and just coming up with the plot of a movie and making a song about it, it's stupid. But Iron Maiden was so kick-ass in the 80s, the first half of the 80s, that you didn't care. You didn't care that the lyrics were kind of stupid. Anyway, that's just my opinion. Just my opinion. I'm sorry. I don't want to insult anyone. I just think their lyrics are kind of stupid. Anyway, this album's horrible. It's a really bad album, and it's really boring, and it's not like prog rock is not just doing long, boring solos for like 5 minutes. That's, listen to a King Crimson album. You'll learn what prog rock is. Or Rush, like listen to a Rush album. You'll hear some prog. Plus, also maybe Maiden. Maiden do have a few metal prog albums or prog metal albums that I think are more successful than what they've been doing in recent years, where these days I feel like it's just very formulaic and they're just hitting a lot of Maiden beats that we know they're going to hit. Like it starts off slow, does the gallop, long solos, goes back to the slow thing. It's very repetitive, and there's really nothing progressive about it. So, next album, The Book of Souls. The Book of Souls. Oh man, what Maiden definitely didn't need to do is start releasing double albums. Oh god, after The Final Frontier, you were like, make your album shorter. But no, they went in the opposite direction. They doubled down on that shit. Oh no. But it's a little bit better. A little bit. Because I like one song. I like one song on this album. I believe it was the lead-off single, Speed of Light. It's actually a catchy, fun, kind of straight-to-the-point hard rock song. Like, I'm really surprised that later Maiden even wrote a song like this. Yeah, that's a fun song. It's catchy. It's a little different for them. And it has a little life to it. And I like Speed of Light. Everything else is not that great, though. There's a misconception that the song The Red and the Black is like some kind of later-day Maiden classic. No, it's a shit song. You're wrong. They do the whoa, whoa, like they're fucking U2. That shit to the stadium. I hate that shit. As Ian Wadley said, it's like a European football shit. I don't want fucking music turned into a fucking sporting event, Hey, that's fine if that's what you're into. I'm more a music guy than a sport guy. I think there's something, especially when Europeans do it, there's something kind of fascist about it. Feels like fascism to me. I don't like it. I don't like people singing along to songs in general at concerts, I came to hear the fucking band play. I came to hear that singer sing. I don't want to hear some jackass accountant that's pretending he's a rock star for a night sing. Fuck that guy. It's not about you. It's about them, the people of talent on the stage. That's who I paid to hear sing. That's just my own personal thing. So anyway, all these whoa-whoa-who's, I'm not a fan. Unless it's fucking short and snappy fun like Misfits whoa-whoa-who's. I don't want to hear whoa-whoa-who's in a fucking song. I don't like it. I'm not impressed. It's an easy way to make it seem like the song's catchier than it really is. It's a trick. They're tricking you. And it's fucking 13 minutes long. There's no reason why that fucking whoa-whoa-whoa song should be 13 minutes long. U2 wouldn't have done that. So it's pretty sad when U2 is playing it cooler than fucking Iron Maiden. Shitty song. And the rest of the album's kind of shitty. And this is why I really wanted this to be the worst Maiden album. But I put it up only because I like Speed of Light. I didn't like any song on those other two albums, so I had to give it a slight edge because I like Speed of Light. But man, these last 3 songs on this album, it's the worst thing Iron Maiden ever did. Tears of a Clown. Come on. It's a fucking song about Robin Williams and they call it Tears of a Clown. This is some hackneyed, hokey shit. And the song's shit. And then after that, The Man of Sorrows. This is laughable. It's laughable. Sorry. Horrible song. And then the worst song Iron Maiden ever created. Empire of the Clouds. Oh my god. It's a fucking 18-minute and 1 second fucking abomination. It's horrible. From the first note, it does this really maudlin piano and strings and I will say this, it's real prog rock because the parts actually do change, unlike a lot of their other shit. But it's all horrible. It's just bad part going into another bad part, going into another bad part. And it's one of the worst things ever created. It's embarrassing. I'm sorry. This shit's embarrassing. Man, you have to go back and listen to like early 80s Maiden just to wash it out of your fucking head, man. It's horrible. But if you like it, more power to you. More power to you. Okay, next album. Oh, yeah, the new one that you're all fucking going nuts for. Senjutsu. Yes, it's a little bit better than the last two albums. All right, calm down. It's a little bit better than the last two albums. It ain't some fucking return to form like some of you are acting like it is. Not by a long shot. This is Bruce's worst vocal performance ever. He sounds horrible. I'm sorry, the guy just sounds horrible in this album. His wailing, it's just not working. It's not working. He still sounds a little bit better in Blaze. So I will say that. Even Bruce at his worst is still a little bit better than Blaze. All right. But this out, and it sounds horrible. The production, Nico sounds like he's hitting like a cardboard box. It sounds like shit. Let's go through the tracks. Senjutsu is, it's kind of a weak kind of plotting opener. It's fucking 8 minutes, fucking 20 seconds long. It's mid-tempo. It fucking sucks. I don't like this song. Stratego, I guess it's the second best song on the album. It has a little pick-me-up. Sounds like Iron Maiden. So, all right, I'll give that one a pass. Hey, it's fucking Hampton texting me while I'm fucking ripping a new asshole of one of his favorite bands, Iron Maiden. So take that, Hampton. Take that. I'll get back to you after this. Anyway, Stratego, it's all right. Third song, Writing on the Wall. I did not like this at first, but it since has grown on me. It's easily the best song on the album. It sounds like a song. So right there, I was like, ooh, this sounds like a song. It has some melody. It has a hook. I like the kind of 70s kind of hard rock vibe. And I feel like if Bruce can't sing so much anymore, this is more of an area where I think he can kind of pull it off better. And it's a little different for them. So there you go. Writing on the Wall, a decent song. It's not great. It's not great, but it's enough to push this album a little bit ahead of the last two. Lost in a Lost World, horrible. Days of Future Past, horrible. Time Machine, that's not good. Darkest Hour, horrible. Death of the Celts. I can't even believe it. Ralph Vieira even likes this song. He likes some of this shit. I'm surprised. I love Ralph. He's great. We all have our own opinions, you know. So God bless you, Ralph. But this song does nothing for me. And all that fucking Irish jig stuff they do. Thin Lizzy, they only did this here and there. And they didn't go on and on with it. Fucking Iron Maiden. What is this? It's fucking leprechauns dancing around for 10 minutes. That's what it sounds like to me. It's horrible. And then the Parchment. Oh, come on. You're telling me these guys aren't real life Spinal Tap? This is horrible. Hell on Earth is a little bit better than the last two songs, but it still sucks. So, Senjutsu is not a good album. Don't like it. But it's a little bit better than the last two. I can kind of listen to it. I never want to listen to it again, though. These albums that are on the bottom of the list, I actually owned the other three, but I got rid of them after having to listen to them again. I was like, fuck it, I don't want this shit in my music library. So my Maiden discography, save for the omission of Virtual 11, ends with A Matter of Life and Death. I don't want to, that's it. I'm done, Maiden. I'm done with you guys as a new current band. Sorry, nothing against you. But not for me. Looking forward to the next Priest album. But as we go along in this list, it's going to get a little bit better. So the X Factor, number 13. Yeah, the X Factor. I actually put an album with a guy that can't sing above the last three Maiden albums. So it doesn't say much for those last three Maiden albums because this guy can't sing. Blaze can't sing. I would say he can barely sing on this album. It's an improvement. It's better than the next album he would do with them, Virtual 11, because he's kind of hanging in there a little bit on this one. I mean, I still don't get why Steve Harris would hire this guy, and this album would actually be a few notches above if this guy could actually sing. But he's hanging in there. He's because the songs are different. They're not like, it's not like normal Maiden stuff. The songs are slower and a little darker. And if anything, I think they shouldn't have called this Iron Maiden. This could have been like a separate new band. It just has a kind of different mid-90s sound. Whereas with Virtual, they're sounding more like traditional Iron Maiden, and Blaze just can't pull it off. But here he can kind of almost semi-pull it off. And I like the songs better. The songs are actually decent. This is why I put it above the other albums. They're a little different. This is a little more genuinely prog metal. Like, it's really progressive in spots in a way. It's not just them noodling and soloing over and over again. And I really love the song, the single from it, Man on the Edge. That's like the most new wave of British heavy metal sounding song they had done since the early 80s. Like, you know, it really, like, this sounds like, Man on the Edge sounds like a song Paul Di'Anno could have sang. I like it. That's just like a straight up kind of fucking British sounding metal song. I love that song. It's not really a fun album. It's kind of depressing, kind of drags. Blaze ain't the best singer in the world, so it's nothing to write home about. But I left it in my library. I like if once in a blue moon one of these songs popped up in a metal shuffle, it wouldn't spoil the party. So I'll let it in. It's not great, but it's not the embarrassment that Virtual 11 is, and it's not quite as much of a drag as the last three Maiden albums, in my opinion. In my opinion. All right? It's just my opinion. So I let that one kind of slide. It's passable. So there we go to number 12. My brother, Mick Watkins, really loves this album. Sorry, Mick. I'm with you on a lot of this shit, but I'm not with this album so much. I definitely don't love it, but I don't hate it. Okay, now we're getting to albums I don't hate and think are maybe a little bit better than passable. All right, it's a little bit better than passable, and that is number 12, Fear of the Dark. Fear of the Dark. I think this is their best-selling album. Correct me if I'm wrong. It shouldn't be their best-selling album, but it is. But I can kind of hear why, because it is melodic, it is catchy, probably the most commercial thing they ever did. So I guess that makes sense. This is the thing about this album. Only the first song and the last song sound like Iron Maiden. This is essentially a Bruce Dickinson solo album where he's using Iron Maiden as a backing band. That's what this sounds like. With the exception of Be Quick or Be Dead in the title track, none of this really sounds that much like Iron Maiden. A few songs, I guess Afraid to Shoot Strangers and The Fugitive and The Apparition sound kind of like Maiden. Everything else just sounds like Tattooed Millionaire Part 2. You know, they were moving a little in this direction with No Prayer for the Dying, but here, there was a major power shift, obviously. I guess Steve just wanted to keep Bruce in the band, so he essentially let Iron Maiden record a solo Bruce Dickinson sounding album. This is a hard rock album. Hey, and I love hard rock, and I love AC/DC, and they sound very AC/DC-ish on a lot of these songs. Like, From Here to Eternity, he even says, hell ain't a bad place. Like, he's actually pinching from Bon Scott, and it does the finger tap and shit, and it has the kind of gang vocals, and yeah, it sounds like AC/DC. Also, Weekend Warrior sounds kind of AC/DC-ish, but From Here to Eternity totally sounds AC/DC-ish. And he covered Sin City on Tattooed Millionaire. So, yeah, I think this was something Bruce Dickinson was consciously going for. And he was singing in a raspier way. Maybe because The Razor's Edge sold so well and, you know, AC/DC had the big comeback. So he wanted to kind of push Maiden more in that direction. And I'm sure all the fucking football-loving, chant-loving fucking blokes in Europe fucking love this shit, you know? Anyway, so Afraid to Shoot Strangers. The only other song besides the title track that got played a few times in subsequent tours, I don't know. It's a boring song, I think. Doesn't do much for me. If anything, this song really kind of sets up later Maiden. Don't like it. Fear is the Key, that's a shit song. Childhood's End, don't like that song. Wasting Love, it's this power ballad, don't like that song. Fugitive, I do kind of like that song. Yeah, it's kind of silly that it's based on the TV show or movie, but, you know, it's a little like The Prisoner. Although The Prisoner, it was kind of cooler to write a song about The Prisoner because it's more obscure than The Fugitive. But it's a cool song. It sounds a little more like Maiden. It's rocking. I like Chains of Misery. It sounds like a Dokken song. And it doesn't just sound like Dokken because Chains is in the title. Like, it sounds like a Dokken song. Like, I don't know why in 1992 Iron Maiden sounded like Dokken. Dokken didn't even sound like Dokken in the 90s. But hey, I love Dokken. So, hey, fuck it. Give me a Dokken sounding song. Like, even when they hit the chorus and the gang vocals come in just to sing the end of the chorus, that's like exactly what they would do in a Dokken song. So, yeah, I dig it. I love a Dokken song. I love a Dokken song. Oh, getting drunk. Oh, this is going to be fun. Yeah, I like Chains of Misery. It's fun. The Apparition. I'd say this is my favorite song on the album. I like The Apparition. It's kind of cool. It sounds like something that would have been on the album prior to it. It's a cool song. Judas Be My Guide. Sounds like Bruce Dickinson solo. It's very 80s metal. I love it. I love it because it sounds like an 80s metal song in 1992. I dig that song. Weekend Warrior. I could take it or leave it. And the title track, I think, is overrated. It's all right. It sounds like Iron Maiden, but I don't know. It's not one of my favorite songs. So anyway, Fear of the Dark, it's all right. All right? So now we're getting to it's all right. There's some songs I like. There's some songs I don't like. It's all right. It's a mixed bag. But some of these songs, if they popped up on shuffles, sometimes I won't skip. So there you go. Not bad. Not bad, Iron Maiden. Okay, we're getting a little bit better. We're slowly approaching to quality. Okay, number 11, Dance of Death. Okay, we got to talk about this album cover, though. Okay. Worst album cover Iron Maiden ever did. Horrible, horrible, horrible. It makes you not want to like this album. Just so you know, what's really bad about this album cover is it was like it was actually a good album cover that they originally had designed, and then I don't know, for whatever weird reason, I don't know if it was Steve or Bruce. It was one of those two guys, because they're the only two guys that call the shots in the band. So one of those two guys, or both, decided, like, it was just this more stark image of like Eddie as the Grim Reaper on the dance floor. Red, stark, black, white, red. It was very cool looking. And in fact, here it is, right here. That's the original design. That's what I have in my iTunes library, because I don't want to look at that other ugly fucking Masquerade shit. But for whatever reason, they decided, they thought, ooh, it's not busy enough. And they had another artist come in and draw all that fucking bullshit from before, and essentially ruined what could have been a really cool album cover. It's like the same way Steve Harris can't hear that a guy can't sing and he makes him the singer of the band. What is it about Iron Maiden and some of the choices? They make questionable choices. And that album cover is definitely a questionable choice. May I also say, I've noticed that online, starting with this album on, I've always seen people and fans do better alternatives of the album covers that they put out. Like, even with Senjutsu, I've seen a better Senjutsu album cover than what they put out, and that's one of the better ones these days. So I don't know. Like, I think maybe because they're putting too much focus on the beer and the merchandising, some of the quality has dropped even in the album covers. Just gotta say, like, I don't know how this fucking shit gets through Made in Ink, but it does somehow. So now let's talk about the music. Dance of Death, another alright album. Not horrible, not horrible. Has some songs I like. Not great, and obviously I prefer the album before it and after it. So I feel like it's a little bit of a drop off from Brave New World, and not quite on the level of A Matter of Life and Death. It's somewhere in between. It kind of drops off a bit. It's not horrible though. If you like those two albums, you'd probably like this album too. It's just a little bit of a drop off. So it actually starts off pretty promising. I like Wildest Dreams. It's just like a kind of catchy, melodic, heavy metal song. Kind of 80s sounding. I dig it. I dig it. It's a catchy song. Rainmaker, again, it's catchy enough, you know. It's a little Iron Maiden by numbers, but it's got a little more energy and life to it than they have in their more recent albums. No More Lies, a little pretentious, you know, but I can roll with it. I don't know if I pronounce this right. Pardon my French, but Montsegur. It's actually a good song. I like it. It's not a bad song. You know, they're doing their noodling. They do it in a kind of Frenchy way. That's the thing about noodling. You notice, this is another way that Iron Maiden's like Epcot Center. Their noodling was slightly changed. Like, they could slightly alter the noodling to sound a little more Japanese, or a little bit more Middle Eastern, or a little more Irish, which they seem to do the most, and here a little more French. At some point, after Eskimo Eddie, I figure we're going to get like Mexican Bandit Eddie. So we'll get Mexican Bandit, and there's already been t-shirts of that, but we'll get like an album, a proper album of Mexican Eddie Bandit. And will the noodling suddenly be like, anyway, so they do like the French noodling here, but it's catchy enough. Dance to Death. This is where they really did the Irish jig stuff. They really start kicking in, and they do the high speed thing, and don't really like it. Don't like that song. It's kind of stupid. And I don't like the keyboards. Gates of Tomorrow. That's the thing. This album starts off strong, but then goes down and does a lot of things I don't like about modern Maiden. Songs are kind of pompous, long-winded, not that fun. First half's much better. Age of Innocence is a weird song. I kind of like the verses, but that chorus, I don't know, sounds like fucking Loverboy. It's like, dude, it comes in with this really poppy chorus that just does not flow well with the rest of the song. Anyway, don't like that song either. Journeyman. Now, this is a song I hear a lot of people talk shit about. I actually don't mind this song. It's too long. Definitely does not need to be 7 minutes long. Doesn't do enough interesting things to warrant it being 7 minutes long. But it's acoustic. I like the old-fashioned like orchestra behind it. It kind of reminds me of a Uriah Heep kind of song. You know, this sounds like a good old-fashioned kind of 70s prog rock song with the acoustic guitar, and it's a little different. So I give them credit for doing something a little different, and I don't mind that song. You know, it's a little long, but it's longer than it needs to be, but I don't mind it. And I don't mind this album. It's all right. Not great, but there's some songs I like, and it's all right. It's definitely better than their newer shit. Oh shit, we're getting into the top 10. Woo! Top 10 Maiden. Top 10 Maiden. And there are 6 albums I love in the top 10. All right. So not bad. Not bad, Maiden. You're getting there. You're slowly winning me over. Slowly. I have to go back. I have to get into a time machine. But eventually, you're winning me over. You're getting there, slowly but surely. Number 10, Brave New World. Overrated. Overrated album. Not such a resounding return to form as a lot of fans act like it is. But, that being said, it's a solid album. In fact, this is the first solid album on the list, in my opinion. Hence why it broke the top 10. Number 10, it's a Brave New World. An actual solid Maiden album. What do you know? This is actually a nice balance of the progressive side and their heavy metal side. Ooh, let me fix my hair. So the Wicker Man, catchy song, catchy tune, catchy chorus. It's rocking. This is shit like, hey, I can get down. They sounded like a kind of a catchy, fun, badass British rock band again. I like it. I mean, yeah, it's just the Wicker Man. It's about the movie The Wicker Man because that's how they do it. That's how Iron Maiden comes up with all these amazing ideas. They watch a movie and then they write a fucking song about it. But hey, I love the movie The Wicker Man, and it's a great song. So anyway, so good job, Maiden. Ghost of the Navigator, great song. I like this song too. Cool song, you know, and actually some interesting things going on musically. Whoa, not bad. Brave New World, all right. I like Blood Brothers a lot. That's catchy. I will say this. I think the second half is not as strong as the first half. And after a while, I find my mind drifting off a little bit here and there, but there's nothing that I think is bad. That's the key. Even though I think the first half is stronger than the second half, just like I did with Dance of Death, there's nothing that really sticks out as annoying or bad. So because of that in itself is why I would put this a little above Dance of Death, because even Dance of Death had a few moments that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Brave New World never rubs me the wrong way, even if I kind of drift off and I start thinking about, maybe I should listen to a Judas Priest album next. Like, that starts happening towards the end of Brave New World. But there's nothing bad about it. And there's some good songs, and the first half is strong, so I guess it is a little bit of a return to form because of that. So there you go. So Brave New World. Overrated, but an improvement from what they were doing in the 90s for the most part. So now we get to number 9. Now this will show you Maiden fans that I'm not just a fucking hater. That I will like a later Maiden thing if I think they bring it. All right? If I think they bring it a little bit more and they're putting in the effort, I will give credit where credit is due. And in fact, I'm surprised that this album doesn't get more love because I think it's a good album. Now we're finally getting to albums that I would say are good, right? Not great. Wouldn't say it's great, but it's good. It's a good album. It's a little more than solid. And that's number 9, A Matter of Life and Death. This is actually a post-2000 Iron Maiden album that I think, for the most part, gets it right. Now, no, it's not the kind of Maiden I love most, and it's not the kind of Maiden I wish they would get back to. It's not new wave of British heavy metal fucking street Maiden. It ain't that Maiden. It's definitely prog metal Maiden. But if they have to be a prog metal band, if they gotta be that, this is doing it right in my opinion. It's actually well thought out, and lyrics are actually a little bit better than average, and musically it's actually thought out. It sounds like an album where they actually put a lot of thought in writing interesting music and the progressions and stuff like that. I pretty much like every song on the album. After a while, because the songs do kind of sound alike, it kind of gets washed out here and there. But if anything, unlike the last album, I think the second half is stronger. I think it actually starts like really kicking in a bit with the reincarnation of Benjamin Brigg. I think that it picks up there a little bit and never really lets go from that point on. I pretty much like the whole album. I like These Colors Don't Run. It's a really cool song. And in a lot of ways, I feel like this is like X Factor done better. It's dark, and it's like true prog metal, kind of like X Factor was, but it's not as sluggish. It's not as mid-tempo, like there are actually some faster songs here and there, and the tempo shifts around. Plus, Bruce Dickinson, at this point, can still sing pretty well. He doesn't have that mean bite that he had in the 80s, and even in the early 90s to a degree. He doesn't have that mean bite anymore, but he can hold a note. Like, his wailing is not horrible like it is now, like on Senjutsu. So like he could do it, and he's definitely a better singer than Blaze, and he's pulling it off. And I think between the better singing and the more varied tempos. And just in general, I think the songs are stronger here than on X Factor. But it's kind of like what they were trying for in X Factor and weren't able to pull off entirely. Here they pull it off. So it's like X Factor done right. This and X Factor are their darkest albums. This is a very dark album. I think it's a poignant album, and not just like pretentious, but actually poignant. It reflects like the time period then. It was like the war on terror, and we were getting into all these conflicts in the Middle East and stuff. I mean, there's some historical shit, like The Longest Day and The Pilgrim, but it didn't feel like it was all just a history lesson. Another thing is I really love, my favorite song on the album is For the Greater Good of God, and that shows you exactly like the difference between what Maiden did then and what they do now. And this wasn't that long ago. 2006. Okay, I guess it kind of was long ago. But anyway, like this song, For the Greater Good of God, like it keeps building and building and the music keeps changing. And like there's this part that you think is the chorus of the song, and it's pretty catchy. But then like you're like 5 minutes into the song, and finally it's revealed that this chorus is actually a pre-chorus to this other even catchier part. And they do their noodling thing, but it's like utilized in a really hooky way. And they get to the chorus of the song, and you're like, shit, this is the chorus of the song. I didn't realize that other thing wasn't the chorus. To me, that's like really clever songwriting. Like here, there's actually some clever songwriting. And then it goes into other part that's not just an Irish jig noodle fest. It's actually like chords and stuff, and they're doing different parts. And so like it's like, yeah, this is prog metal. This is actually music with written, and it takes you on a trip, and it goes to different places, and it's not just doing the same thing for 10 minutes. I mean, this song and this whole album overall is kind of what Maiden fans act like Maiden still does, but they don't really, all right? Listen to the new album, and then listen to this album, and tell me that this is not a far more thought out, better written album. Of course it is. This is a much better written album. And I'm surprised it doesn't get more love. I also like the last line, The Legacy, a lot. It has an opening that's a slow acoustic opening, but it doesn't sound like phoned in stock Maiden. It's a little different in the way it comes in and grows. And I think this is a pretty good album. In fact, if I was into kind of heavy-handed, self-important, serious prog metal, which I'm not, I would love this album. But it's just not really my kind of music. That's the only reason why I just like this album. You know, it's not really my thing, but I can hear that it's done well. It's done well on this album. So there you go. So I'm not so much of a hater of later Maiden if I think they put in the effort, and I think they put in the effort with this album. But that's it. Here we go. Number 8, Somewhere in Time. Overrated. People think it's a really great classic album. I think it's just good. It's good though. I like it. It's catchy. The songs are catchy. This was the first kind of drop off for Maiden, in my opinion, where they did something that was not nearly as awesome as the first 5 albums. Yes, I'm a first 5 albums guy. The first 5 albums are the best Maiden albums. But they're still like, you know, they could still write a hook and melody at this point. They were still writing hooks and melodies, and it's upbeat, and there's nothing really bad about it, you know? It kind of gets a little washed out, and it's another reason why I put the subsequent album ahead of this, is that after a while, this album just the songs kind of blend together. There are some highlights. I like Caught Somewhere in Time. Wasted Years is very catchy, although that's a song I'm a little burned out on. Heaven Can Wait is my favorite song on the album. I really love Heaven Can't Wait. It's just a really catchy song. I think Bruce, his vocals are really soaring on it, something you can't pull off anymore. Unlike Rob Halford, who could totally pull off the kind of shit he did before. I saw Judas Priest do, on the first leg of the Firepower tour, they did fucking Saints in Hell. And fucking Rob sounded just like he did on Stained Class. Take that. Take that. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. I like to hear Bruce try to pull off Heaven Can't Wait these days. Oh my God, it'd be a fucking train wreck. That's all I'm saying. It'd be a train wreck. But back then, back in the mid-'80s, he could fucking sing a song like this. And it sounded great. Great song. Stranger in a Strange Land. Cool, catchy, kind of mid-tempo, kind of pop metal song. I dig it. I dig it. It's an alright album. It's a good album. And once in a while, I listen to it. And if one of these songs pops up on a metal shuffle, I ain't kicking it out of bed. So there you go for an album that I think is a little overrated, but it's still good. And that's Somewhere in Time. Number 7. Now, this was not planned. I did not plan this to be the case. This is not on purpose. This is really what happened. It really happened that number 7 is seventh son of a seventh son. All right? All right? Just happened that way. I did not plan this, but I feel like there's some alchemy involved. Some alchemy involved made it my number 7. All right. So this is gonna be the most controversial section of my video, because obviously I put an album ahead of this that is considered to be one of the weakest Iron Maiden albums, and this by a lot of fans is considered to be one of the strongest, if not the strongest. In fact, the fan base that loves the prog metal side, this is usually considered the best album. You know, I've heard a lot of Maiden fans say this is their best album, and I get it. So there you go. I'm not a hater. I get it. I get why, if you were into the prog metal side of Maiden, this would be your favorite album. And it is the best, obviously, if you're into prog metal. If you're into prog metal, this is as good as it gets, because it's still the 80s. And if anything, I put this ahead of the last album because I think it's even more melodic, and I think the hooks and melodies are stronger. And musically, I think it's a little stronger. It's not as washed out as Somewhere in Time sometimes gets. I think the songs are very distinct, and they're very well written, and they're very catchy for the most part. It's not entirely what I want from Maiden, just like with A Matter of Life and Death. It's like, this isn't really what I want from the band. Me personally, as a guy that's more into the new wave of British heavy metal side of the band. But if you were more into prog metal, there's no doubting. I would say this was a great album if you were into that side of it. I'm not into prog metal so much, so I just say it's a good album. It's a good album, and I listen to it from time to time. Moonchild, badass song. Love it. Best song on the album, in my opinion. Kicks ass. It's hard rocking. I don't hate Infinite Dreams. I heard some fans don't like it. Some fans do. It's slow. It's mellow, but it changes. The parts change. You know, that's the thing that they don't do so much these days. It's not just boring soloing over the same boring gallop for 10 minutes, you know. So Infinite Dreams is truly progressive. It changes, and it's kind of mellow, and it's all right. I like Can I Play with Madness? There you go. I've heard a lot of metalheads shit on this song. It's too poppy for them. But hey, I'm not against some pop music. I like a lot of pop stuff. And it's catchy. It's a catchy song. It's melodic. It's ear candy to me. I think it's catchier than anything on Somewhere in Time. And I don't mind it. So there you go. I ain't a hater. They can do their fucking catchy pop metal song, and I get behind it. Actually, I take it back. Moonchild's my second favorite song on the album. My favorite song on the album is The Evil That Men Do. Is this based on the Charles Bronson movie? I feel like it might be, because it's Iron Maiden. Awesome song. Really catchy. Love it. It's not early 80s Street Maiden, but it's the next best thing. I love that song. The second side, I don't like as much. It's a little more pretentious, but it's all right. I do like The Clairvoyant, though. The Clairvoyant, I used to be a bass player myself, so yeah, man, that's great bass line. It's a catchy song. I like it. And so Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, if Maiden had to go prog, this is the way to do it. It's a good album, but it's not the Maiden I love most. That's all I'm saying. But it's a good album, so I'll give it credit. So it's a strong number 7. So there you go, Maiden fans. Strong number 7 for Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. Number 6, and now we get to the real controversy. Yes, number 6 is No Prayer for the Dying. And I just put it ahead of 2 considered classic 80s Maiden albums, and most fans consider this to be subpar. Well, we all got our opinions. This is the best Maiden album after the top 5, in my opinion. And it's not just because it's the first Maiden album I ever bought. I'm not that guy. I don't get all caught up in nostalgia. It's not for me. If anything, I was a little let down when I first heard this. I thought, because I like Tail Gunner a lot, and then I thought the rest of the album was as heavy and rocking. I wasn't so into it when I first got it. It was that over the years, when I got more into early Maiden, and especially Paul Di'Anno era Maiden, I realized that this was the most straight up, most new wave of British heavy metal sounding Maiden album that they ever did, subsequent to since the first 3 albums, actually. It's really only the first 3 albums that sound new wave of British heavy metal. And this is the closest to that kind of sound. Now, it's not on par with those first 3 albums. It's not as ass-kicking and awesome as those 3 albums. And the songwriting's not as strong. And Bruce Dickinson is not as awesome as Paul Di'Anno, in my opinion. But it's still a great album. I love it. The most underrated Maiden album, in my opinion. But again, it's all about taste. If you really had a hard-on for Adrian Smith and you really like their prog metal leanings of the prior 2 albums, then yeah, this album would seem regressive to you and you wouldn't like it so much. But if you were a guy that liked their earlier shit and wanted to hear them get back to the streets, then that's a different story, brother. This is a fucking Return to Roots album. I love it. Tail Gunner, yeah, you can say it's a lesser Aces High, but fuck it. I'll take a lesser Aces High, because Aces High is so awesome, who wouldn't want a song that's kind of like that again? Holy Smoke, great song. Catchy, a little different for them, a little pop. I would say this is the thing, though, with the exception of one song, Fear of the Dark to me sounded like a Bruce Dickinson solo album. This is pushing things a little in that direction, but I still think it sounds like Iron Maiden. Like, even this song still has a Maidenish sound to it. It's just like poppier Maiden, that's all. And I really love Holy Smoke. No Prayer for the Dying, which sounds very similar to Infinite Dreams, but I think it's even better. Yeah, I think it's even better in Infinite Dreams. I really like the vibe. It sounds a little more organic and a little less academic, which is why I like it. Public Enema #1, great song. I really dig that. Fate's Warning, I dig it. The Assassin, I dig it. One Silent, Run Deep, I dig it. My favorite song on the album, Hooks in You. Love Hooks in You. Love it, love it, love it. That's for you, Mark. Love it. Hooks in You. It might be 1990, but this is just straight up catchy, melodic 80s heavy metal. I love that song. Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter. That's the song that sounds like a Bruce Dickinson solo song. And sure enough, it was at first. He did a different version, a solo version, for Nightmare on Elm Street, The Dream Child. That's the 5th one. And that version's all right, but I do prefer this one. I think it's ballsier and more metal. And check out the Metal Dungeon in November. My man, Eric, RMCP, and Mick Watkins, we're going to be talking about every Nightmare on Elm Street movie. And we'll talk about fucking The Dream Child. We'll talk about that kid. Fucking little Freddy kid. I watched my Dawkins video where I actually have a little mini Nightmare on Elm Street breakdown there where I kind of ranked them. Anyway, great song. I think it's catchy. I like Bringing Your Daughter to the Slaughter. It's a fun song. It's catchy. I can see why it did really well, especially in England. It was like a top 10 hit in England. Fucking cool, man. It's cool that the English people would put a song like this in their top 10. Every Halloween time, I make a Halloween playlist. This song always goes on it. It's catchy. It's fun. It's not one of my favorite Maiden songs, but I do love it, and it's a catchy song. So there you go. The only song I don't really like on this album is Mother Russia. Don't really like that song. And that's kind of like Epcot Center fucking Iron Maiden again, where they're doing the whole World Showcase. World Showcase Maiden, not so into it. But the rest of the album, I think it's great. I love it. Underrated. Ballsy. Back to the streets Maiden, man. Back to the streets. And that's the way I like it. In fact, I think No Prayer for the Dying is really the model they should have had in their later years. I feel like that's, if you're going to be dad metal, fucking give people some catchy rock and roll, man. Because that's what the dads really want. Yeah, they like their history shit. They like getting drunk and going to the World Showcase. But they also just fucking want to hear ballsy, catchy rock and roll music, man. Give it to people. Come on. Come on, Maiden. Have some fun. Stop with these fucking bullshit, long, boring songs. Anyway, now we're getting into the Holy Grail, man. The fucking top 5. For the first time, I'm going to sound like a Maiden geek. Yeah, because I love the first 5 albums. Yeah, man, this is what it's about. In addition to Eddie, the only reason why we're still talking about Maiden is because of these first 5 albums. These first 5 albums are fucking amazing. They're metal masterpieces. My number 5 is Peace of Mind. Now, some Maiden fans think this is their best album. And if you think that, you're right. It is for you. Not for me. If I had to say my least favorite of the top 5, it's definitely this one. Because, and this is the only reason, otherwise it's awesome. But I'm not a huge fan of Flight of Icarus. Is that how you say that? Icarus? Icarus? I don't know. Whatever. That song. It's a little too ready-made anthem for me. I'm not so into that song. And I think the last 3 songs, Quest for Fire, Son of Steel, and To Tame a Land, are just, they're all right. There's a little bit of a drop. Just a little bit of a drop-off. It's still solid. These aren't bad songs. And the other songs, where Eagles Dare, Revelations, Dive Your Boots On, The Trooper, and Steel Life, are so awesome that I'll let it slide for dropping off a bit towards the end because those songs are so fucking awesome. And Dive Your Boots On is kind of the last song that sounded like a song that perhaps Paul Di'Anno could have sang. It's an awesome, straight fucking from the street song. I love this album. It drops off a little bit towards the end, but man, they won me so much with the other great songs on the album that I'll let it slide. But it is my least favorite of the first 5 because of the drop-off. Still a classic metal album, and if it's your favorite, man, nothing wrong with that. Now we're going to move to number 4. Now, number 4 is a little upset in my ranking because for years, I always said this was my favorite Bruce Dickinson album. And when I was a kid, this was my favorite Maiden album, period. I wasn't so impressed with No Prayer for the Dying back when I was a kid. But then I went backwards and listened to some of their earlier albums, and this was the one that really clicked for me. Power Slave. God damn. It might have began Disney World Eddie, but it's badass. It's badass Disney World Eddie. This is an amazing album. Okay, now we're getting past just albums that I think are good and great. Now we're getting to masterpieces. That's right. My top 4 I consider masterpieces. This is a masterpiece. Even the fucking long-ass song at the end, clocking in at 13 minutes and 45 seconds, Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. Now this is how to write a fucking long song. This song is awesome. It keeps changing and moving and doing different stuff. It's not just fucking bullshit soloing for 30 minutes. I love Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. So that shows you I'm not against the idea of a long progressive metal song in theory. You just gotta actually write a great song and keep it interesting and keep moving different parts, you know? And this song does it. Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner is a song I love to put on jukeboxes when I go to bars because I get bang for my buck. I know at least for 13 minutes and 45 seconds, I'm gonna get a great song. I fucking love that song. But man, this whole fucking album, Aces High, 2 Minutes to Midnight, my favorite song on the album. Now, man, why don't they write songs like this anymore? Fucking dads would love this shit. 2 Minutes to Midnight, just catchy, ballsy, fucking catchy, melodic, heavy metal music with a catchy chorus and hooks. Hooks and melody. Hooks and melody. Remember that. It's important. I love this song. Flash of the Blade. Awesome song. Awesome. Love it. The Duelist is great. Back in the Village is great. Power Slave, great. Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. I already told you why I thought that. But it's all great. This is some catchy ass shit. It's heavy still. They still haven't lost their heaviness, even though they're moving into a slightly more progressive area. For a long time, this was my favorite one with Bruce Dickinson singing. And his vocals are great on it. It's a great album. You know it. It's Power Slave. Everyone knows Power Slave's great. But the last time it was really this year that I shifted my opinion. And I said, you know what? This isn't my favorite one with Bruce singing. Nope. Number 3 is Number of the Beast. Number of the Beast is my favorite Iron Maiden album, Bruce Dickinson singing. And there's a couple reasons why I decided that it edged out Power Slave. I will say the main reason is because of Clive Burr. That's right, Clive Burr. No disrespect to Nico. He's all right. But to me, this is like the difference between like Les Binks and Dave Holland and Priest. Clive Burr just had an organic quality to his drumming. You know, it just had the street edge to it, and it's different. Whereas Nico sounded a little more mechanical. The more I listened to early Maiden, I realized that a big part of it's Clive Burr. Yeah, I really love Clive Burr, and I love his drumming. It added a organic warmth to their music that I don't think they ever had with Nico afterwards. This is the last time the band sounds like the band from the first 2 albums. Even though Bruce Dickinson is stepping in and replacing Paul Di'Anno, there are still several songs that sound like they could have been Paul Di'Anno era Maiden, and that's my favorite Maiden. It just has that vibe. It still has that kind of dirty street, early 80s vibe to it, you know? And as great as Power Slave is, Power Slave has a more kind of polished mid-80s vibe to it. It's awesome, but it just doesn't have that vibe that the early 80s albums had. And this is the last album that has that vibe, that kind of satanic, street fucking East End of London vibe that they had. And this has it. This is essentially Bruce Dickinson singing, for the most part, like a Paul Di'Anno era Maiden album. And that's what really clicked for me the last couple times I listened to this album. Between that and Clive Burr's drumming, that, yeah, this is definitely my 3rd favorite Maiden album. And the songs, I mean, the songs are all amazing. I Love Invaders, Children of the Damned's great. You know, they start off slow, build, and get heavy, and parts keep changing. It's a crescendo, and there's energy to it. Something lacking in New Maiden. There's an energy to it that just takes you along for the ride. The Prisoner, badass tune, love it. Number of the Beast, classic. I feel like almost this should have been the first song on the album with the spoken word stuff and all that, but I'll let it slide. It's still great, even where it is. Run to the Hills. The song never gets old. Great song. So catchy. Hooks, melody. Hooks and melodies. And they do it in 3 minutes and 50 seconds. What do you know? Maiden wrote one of their most beloved songs, and it's very melodic and hook driven, and it's less than 4 minutes. Whoa. How is that possible? How can Maiden write one of their greatest songs and it's less than 4 minutes? What do you know? What do you know? Gangland. Very underrated song. I love it. In fact, this is the song that sounds the most like a Paul Di'Anno song. So I love it. Streets. It's new wave of British heavy metal, man. I love it. And of course, on later albums, you would get the B-side, Total Eclipse. And that's a great song too. I love it. Hallowed Be Thy Name. One of the, I guess, first truly pretentious epics. But you know what? It works because they fucking bring it. And everything that New Maiden's trying to do, they did much better on this song back in the day. This song kicks ass. I love it. It's epic. And still 7 minutes, which by today's standards would be kind of short for a Maiden epic. Awesome album. One of the greatest metal albums of all time. One of the most badass album covers of all time. Originally, this was going to be the single cover for Purgatory, but they said, no, that's too awesome for just a single cover. We got to make this our next album cover. I know some people like the black version with the black backdrop instead of the blue backdrop, and I understand why the band were like, well, originally it was supposed to be black, and then it was a fuck up, which led to the blue album cover in the early 80s. But I like the classic blue one because to me that looks more like the back of a denim jacket, you know? It's like the back of a denim jacket, man. So I love the original blue Number of the Beast album cover. It's awesome. One of the greatest albums of all time. So there you go. I ain't a hater. I love early Maiden. Awesome album. But then we get to my favorite Maiden, which is Paul Di'Anno Maiden. Yeah, I'm a Paul Di'Anno guy. To me, Bruce Dickinson's, he's a good singer. I like him. It's cool. I know he's a Renaissance man. He fences and flies airplanes and shit like that. It's all cool. I got nothing against him. He's a little pompous and self-important. But whatever. For a long time, too, he was a good singer. He was a good singer for a long time. He had some nice bite, especially on Number of the Beast. Kind of a Dio-esque singer. And I love Dio, so I don't mind, a guy that sings in that style. But he ain't Paul Di'Anno. I'm not saying he's quite like Sammy Hagar, Bruce Dickinson. But to me, it's almost like, what if Sammy Hagar became Van Halen's singer on the third album and David Lee Roth was gone? It's kind of like that. Paul Di'Anno was just a badass dude. Just look at that guy. He was working class. He also brought in a little of that element that like Bon Scott did and Brian Johnson did to AC/DC, where there was a working class quality to him. Bruce Dickinson and Steve Harris, I think they played into each other's worst instincts, where they're very pompous and very Spinal Tap. Whereas with fucking Paul Di'Anno, none of that shit was going on. Even though the lyrics were kind of similar, and there was just something more street about Paul Di'Anno. And I think he was an underrated singer, man. He sang stuff that I don't know if Bruce could have pulled off. I think the general conception is that Bruce has more range, but range is all, it's kind of like Sammy Hagar again and David Lee Roth. And Ozzy Osbourne and Dio, even though I do love both. But range it depends on what you're talking about and what kind of song they're singing. There are certain songs that Paul sang that Bruce couldn't pull off and vice versa. There were different kinds of singers. And even though Bruce might hit certain notes that Paul couldn't hit, there's a certain vibe and certain kinds of songs that I think Paul could do that I never heard Bruce sing or could pull off. So number 2 for me is, and listen, this is what I'll just say. If you really want to hear me go into detail about these 2 albums, check out my review for these 2 albums. I reviewed these 2 albums, my top 2 albums. So check that out, because I don't want to go into all the shit that I already talked about and about why I love these 2 albums so much. So if you haven't watched that video, after I wrap this up, go and watch that video, and then I'm going to say everything I have to say about these first 2 albums. All right? But I'll give you the broad strokes. Number 2 is Iron Maiden. The first album. I know some people who love the Anno think this is their best one. I think Rank-A-Rama does. Hey, I understand. It's an amazing album, but I still give the edge to Killers. Obviously, there you go. Killers is number one. Spoiler alert. But number two, yeah, it's the first album. It's amazing. It's from the street. It's perfect. Prowler, badass. I like version in America where they put Sanctuary in, which was just a single in the UK, but they put it in. To me, it's better with Sanctuary thrown in there. It's awesome. That song's awesome. Running Free. Oh man, they never would do songs like this again after Deanna. So catchy, so street, so working class. I love it. Love that song. Phantom of the Opera shows their progressive side, a little bit of a progressive side, even here, even on the first album. It's like street prog metal. I love Phantom of the Opera. Awesome song. It's all great. Charlotte the Harlot, title track, all great. I love the first album. I only put the next one over it for a couple reasons, which we'll get into, but this is the kind of music I love. I love early 80s heavy metal and early 80s new wave of British heavy metal. So yeah, and you'll hear me talk more about it in the other video if you haven't seen it. And here we go. Number one, Killers. There you go, Killers. Number one, my favorite Maiden album. My favorite Maiden album. It's a fucking masterpiece. I love it. One of the greatest metal albums of all time. Some people prefer the lineup, Dennis Stratton, which is great. I love that lineup. But to me, the Killers lineup is the best lineup. You know, we all gonna have our own opinions, but to me, this is perfection. This is the best Maiden lineup. You got Adrian Smith in the band before he got too into prog metal. Him and Dave Murray doing that kind of like Priest and Thin Lizzy and UFO too. They do the dual leads and they're just in there. They're in the pocket. But yet you still got Clive Burr behind the drums, and you got my favorite vocalist, Paul Di'Anno, my favorite Maiden vocalist, Paul Di'Anno, singing. So to me, this is the best Maiden lineup. And you finally got Martin Birch producing. You know, he didn't produce the first one. It sounded cool. It was a cool production. I dig it. But Martin Birch stepping in took it to a whole other level. Just like how Eddie looks even cooler on this album cover now. Everything's just taken to the next level. To me, this is perfection because they're still really street, but everything is just taken to another level. The band's playing tighter, more ferociously. The songs are a little more thought out. The production's a little bit better. This is perfection. Maiden never topped this album, in my opinion. Never topped this album, and they never will. But you know what? They don't have to because they have a legacy, and their legacy is, man, they did one of the greatest metal albums of all time. This album was competitive with Judas Priest and Black Sabbath and all the great metal bands. This is amazing. The Ides of March, cool way to build it up. Going to Wrathchild, that fucking bass. And I love Steve Harris's bass playing, but man, it was the best in the early days. He would really work a fretboard and did all kinds of awesome shit. And that song's so kick-ass, man. Wrathchild, why'd you stop doing songs like this? I fucking love it. Murders in the Rue Morgue, amazing. Amazing. You know, and it shows that he can do songs kind of like the songs Bruce Dickinson would do. He could do those type of songs too. And Paul Di'Anno fucking nailed it. Another Life. Love the dual guitar harmonies. Amazing song. Amazing song. Fucking tremendous song. Genghis Khan. Cool instrumental. Innocent Exile. Love it. Interesting. A little Rushish. Love it. Killers. Awesome song. Prodigal Son. My favorite Maiden song. There you go. So different for them too. And this also sounds a little Rush. It's a very unique song. And I say this a little bit in the video that I did about the first two albums. But this is like the kind of song that you talk about range. Well, I can't imagine Bruce Dickinson pulling off a song like this as well as Paul Di'Anno does. And this is the thing. Maybe technically speaking, Bruce has a little more range. But I think Paul has more soul. That's right. Paul Di'Anno, I think, has more soul to his voice. And that's why he could put over a song like this. It sounds emotional. It's an amazing song. It's my favorite Iron Maiden song. You just want to get lost in this song. It's wistful and beautiful and haunting and shows this whole other color. That's the thing too. You want to talk about fucking prog rock, you know, and ooh, Maiden's interesting. They can't even do a song like this anymore. This is more prog rock, true prog rock. You know, it's something different and musically, and it evokes a picture and a mood. And man, Prodigal Son, masterpiece of a song. I love this song. And I go off about it even more in that other video. And then my second favorite Iron Maiden song fucking is right up its ass. Fucking Purgatory. Man, everything about a fucking Maiden rocker that you love about a Maiden rocker is in this song. It's almost borderline thrash. This song is so heavy and kick-ass and catchy. What do you know? Maiden used to be catchy. It's fucking badass. It's checking every box. Heavy, fast, catchy, fun, tough, street, evil. Hitting them all. It's one of the greatest metal songs ever written. Prodigal Son might be my favorite Maiden song, and this might be my second, but if I would give a person one Maiden song to listen to, it would be Purgatory, because it's more distinctly Maiden, but Maiden at their fucking top of their game, man. They never topped Purgatory. Fucking amazing song. So badass. That chorus, so catchy. Everything about the song is working. And it clocks in at 3 minutes and 18 seconds. In 3 minutes and 18 seconds, fucking Maiden owned all the fucking bullshit they've been doing for the last couple decades. So there you go. That's how you do it. That's how you fucking do a rock and roll song. You fucking get in there, you knock it out, you just fucking blow people away, and then you're fucking done, and then you hit the pub afterwards. That's the way to fucking do it. And then Drifter, great ending, great song, very interesting, very unique, doesn't sound like anything they did afterwards. Man, fucking, this is it, man. Killers, it's everything. There's a little prog, there's a little street, there's a little punk, it's a little metal, it's a little classic rock. Everything you can love about music. And if you're like me and you love rock and roll, you love hard rock, you love heavy metal, you love all kinds of music, fucking Killers has it. It's fucking top shelf Maiden. One of the greatest albums of any genre ever recorded. And it's also the best album cover too. Fucking Eddie never looked more badass than that. This is it. That's real Maiden in my opinion. So there you go. If you want to hear me gush more about the first two Iron Maiden albums, check out that video. Otherwise, I'm out. My glass of scotch. It's got a bunch of fucking rocks in it. There you go. It's got a bunch of fucking rocks in it. And that's it. That's what I think about Iron Maiden. So there you go. So I hope we all had some fun. I hope no one got butt hurt. You know, Maiden fans, sorry if I'm not crazy about the newer stuff. But if you like it, that's cool. Man, do it. Fucking, you know, do the World Showcase, Fender, have fun, you know, rock out with Samurai Eddie, do your thing, man, that's the thing. It's about having fun, and whatever works for us, you know? Just another asshole with an opinion, that's all. But that's my opinion, and now I'm never going to talk about Iron Maiden again. Goddamn, this has been exhausting. It's exhausting to listen to them, it's exhausting to talk about them. But goddamn it, I won't feel that way the next time it's like Friday or Saturday night and I'm cranking Killers, you know? Yeah, it'll be all fresh and new again. So, alright, so there we go. Fucking, you rock. Thank you for putting up with my bullshit. And that's all I gotta say. That's it. No more Maiden. I'm done talking about that. Really, I'm done.